Red light, it's everywhere. Celebrities, skincare influencers, biohackers, male wellness influencers get their own special name for some reason. What does it do? Which masks actually work? Why are they so expensive? And can you make your own cheaper version? I'm Michelle, chemistry PhD and skincare nerd. To get to the bottom of this, I teamed up with Becky Stern and Ruth Amos, two incredible makers here on YouTube. Let's start with the science of red light. Light can do stuff to skin. I know this sounds like weird pseudoscience, and frankly, a lot of the stuff around red light gives off kind of cult vibes. It's hard to take it seriously when it's promoted by a lot of people like this.
Sunning your balls and photobiomodulation. Ball slapping and massaging.
But there are lots of other examples of skin absorbing light and that energy making something happen. Laser hair removal, really intense light gets absorbed by pigmented hair, it turns into heat, and that kills the hair. UVB from the sun can get absorbed by this thing, a bond breaks, and you get pre-vitamin D. Or it gets absorbed by DNA, that reacts, and that can lead to lots of things like skin cancer, pigment-producing cells pumping out more pigment, and these pigment-producing cells multiplying. In the 1960s, lasers started being used for medical treatments, and there were questions about whether this really intense light might trigger cancer. So a scientist tried zapping shaved rats with red light every day. I know this does not help with the weird cult vibes. He didn't find any cancer, but the zapped rats regrew their hair faster. He used red light because the first lasers were red, and this whole rats with nice hair thing led to more investigation of light treatments. There's now been thousands of studies published on red light, including clinical trials. These found benefits for a whole bunch of things like osteoarthritis, wound healing, pain relief, and of course, skin improvements. The science is a bit murky for reasons that we will get into, but scientists largely agree that red light does something called photobiomodulation. Photo means light, it's modulating, which means speeding up or slowing down biological processes and reactions that were naturally happening in your skin. The evidence really isn't as solid for skin as other evidence-based topical skin treatments we talk about, like sunscreen and retinoids, and those are usually also a lot cheaper. But I think it's pretty clear that red light does something. Honestly, I am pretty surprised because before I looked into it properly, the vibes were just like so bad. Full disclosure, I haven't done any sponsorships with masks or light devices, but I have been sent a whole bunch of masks over the years. Now that I have looked into them, I am more motivated to try to use them, but I am just really bad at forming habits, so we'll see. Here's what seems to be happening. Red light goes into your skin, it gets absorbed by the mitochondria.
Say the line, Bart!
The powerhouse of the cell. Basically, this respiration reaction is how our body produces energy. That energy is what powers all of the chemical reactions happening inside our cells. There are lots of little reactions that add up to make this overall process, and a lot of them are happening inside your mitochondria. They contain an enzyme, and one of its jobs is to just chop up the oxygen. To control how much oxygen chopping happens, there's a whole bunch of nitric oxide sitting in the way, and that is not choppable. The main way that red light is thought to work is it breaks the glue sticking the nitric oxide on so that more oxygen can come in and get chopped, you get more energy. You get faster respiration, which generally seems to speed up natural processes. So in skin, what happens is you get faster healing and repair, reduced inflammation. You also get faster cell reproduction, including fibroblasts, which are cells that are in the dermis of the skin, so the lower layer. They produce more substances like collagen and elastin, which gives your skin a lot of its volume and elasticity, and it generally helps with texture. So that generally makes your skin look and behave better. But just to make things a bit more complicated, which is going to be a recurring theme, some cells that don't have that oxygen chopping enzyme, they still respond to red light. So there are probably other things in the mitochondria that are absorbing light and increasing respiration. That released nitric oxide also widens blood vessels, so you get increased blood flow, which also could contribute to the skin benefits. And there might just be completely different mechanisms that haven't been found yet. But what lights will actually make all of this happen, that's where things get a bit more messy. There are two important things when it comes to light and skin. First, wavelength. This is basically the color of the light, and we are using the word color very loosely here. Things in your skin that absorb light, we call these chromophores. They absorb some colors of light and not others. If I shine this red laser through the red cellophane, the brightness doesn't change much, so most of the red light is going through. But the blue makes it a lot dimmer, so there is energy absorbing into the blue cellophane here. There's potential for a reaction, but there is much less for the red. My blue laser doesn't match as nicely, but you can see it does still get dimmer in the red and brighter through the blue. So this time, there's more potential for a reaction in the red cellophane. For skin treatments, the most studied wavelengths are red, partly because that is what they researched first, the rats with the good hair. Red light also gets deeper into your skin. It isn't absorbed by as much stuff near the very top, so this white light mostly has red left over. In general, it seems like red wavelengths roughly between 600 and 700 nanometers have similar effects in skin. The main two wavelengths you'll see in LED skin products are 633 nanometers and 660 nanometers. Also, LEDs aren't lasers, so they put out a range of wavelengths. This one will be the main one, but they'll put out some on either side of that, and there's also a bit of wiggle room about where the middle is, so plus or minus about 10 nanometers. Some masks also have near infrared. This is like an invisible, redder version of red. It has longer wavelengths and they can penetrate deeper. 770 to about 1200 nanometers has similar overall effects on skin, so the ones down here, but it seems to be absorbed by a different part of the cell. It's photoreceptors in the cell membrane and on membranes inside the cell. Some studies have actually found that near infrared might be more beneficial than red light, and that might be because it penetrates deeper, so it reaches more cells. The most popular wavelength for skin is 830 nanometers. Yes, there is a gap here. For some reason, it seems like these wavelengths just don't have these usual effects. It might be because oxygen absorbs those wavelengths and that could just kind of interfere with that whole oxygen chopping thing. And this is just another complicated thing with light. Some wavelengths will actually undo the effects of other wavelengths. The sun is one example. It has all of these wavelengths, including the beneficial red and infrared ones. But if you get a whole bunch of sunlight, then all of this stuff actually ends up getting worse. Biology is complicated. There are a few less popular wavelengths. Blue is still used quite a bit. The most popular one is 415 nanometers. It's mostly used for acne, so blue light gets absorbed by substances, which are called porphyrins, inside acne bacteria. And this makes free radicals, which kill the bacteria. It is a lot like how benzoyl peroxide works. But blue light can also make the brown hyperpigmentation marks that you might get after acne go darker, and they might hang around for longer. So the light giveth and taketh away. Yellow might do something anti-aging-ish, so these sorts of effects, but there's a lot less evidence for it. For green, there is even less. That's wavelength. The other big thing we care about is dose. How much light are we getting? And again, it's kind of messy, and those quotation marks are there for a reason, because how much light isn't actually a straightforward question. Light is kind of like balls being thrown into your skin, and the official definition of dose is the total weight of the balls. But there are a whole bunch of other factors that change what effect the same total dose can do. This is just a few of them. So let's say you have 10 light balls. Fluence is how spread out the balls are on the skin. Power is how quickly the balls are shot towards the skin. Irradiance is probably the most useful number. It is a mix of fluence and power. It's essentially how bright the light is, but it doesn't tell you the total dose unless you also take into account the treatment time, how long the light is shooting into your skin. There's also how you split this up, 1 big session a week versus 3 smaller ones. Also, how far the light is from your skin. If you have the light pushing into your skin, then it will mostly go in, but if it's further away, then a lot of that will actually get reflected. There are estimates where it's 60%, even 90% of the light just bouncing right off. The pressure from the tool pushing into your skin also makes skin absorb better. For example, it pushes the blood away. So the World Association for Biomodulation Therapy, I know how their logo looks. It has on versus off skin as one of the essential things you need to report in clinical trials. And this is all really annoying because the studies out there don't all match, so it's really hard to compare because all of these things actually make a difference. This leads me onto a myth about red light masks that I've been seeing a lot. There was this video from a med student, Aviva Carter, that went viral last year. It's this idea that red light masks are useless because if you average out the brightness of the LEDs over the whole mask, it ends up being pretty weak, and you may as well use a higher powered panel for a shorter period of time. The overall dose, the number of balls going into your skin, is all that matters.
I tested it, and masks are the worst way to do red light therapy by far. It would be impossible to ever make a good one. Because LED light therapy requires an extreme amount of light, if I take a general average of the whole surface, I get a pathetic 2 milliwatts per centimeter squared. For perspective, to get the same amount of total red light shown to reduce wrinkles in this Omnilux panel study, it would require wearing the mask for 17.5 hours. I can get the same amount of total light with 6 seconds on my panel rig as a 10-minute mask session. I'm summarizing papers with dose and outcome information as a public resource.
But compressing this dose information into just one single number doesn't actually work. The idea that the total dose is all that matters, it doesn't matter if you get the red balls over 15 seconds or 15 minutes, this is called the Bunsen-Roscoe law of reciprocity. I'm so glad I got that right. Turns out this law is more of a gentle suggestion. It breaks all the time with light treatments. Again, biology is complicated. Eating 3 meals in the morning doesn't give the same result as spacing them out throughout the day. Your body doesn't process the food/light in the same way. With light treatments, there's something called a biphasic dose response. As we go across from left to right, we are increasing the amount of light. It seems like if you don't have enough light, then you get no effects, but eventually, if you keep increasing, you pass the threshold, and the more light you use, the greater the effects you get. But at some point, you end up getting too much light, and your effects decrease. And eventually, you can actually get negative effects from having too much light. Possible explanations for this: you might be chopping up the oxygen too fast and generating too many free radicals. It might be because of heat. Anecdotally, the main obvious issues in this area are irritation and hyperpigmentation. So again, the light giveth and taketh away. So you have a therapeutic window around here with a medium amount of light, and this is another law called the Arndt-Schulz law. A lot of scientists seem to like naming things after themselves. There are lots of in vitro studies with cells, animal studies, and clinical trials showing this relationship where the best amount of light is somewhere in the middle. This is just a handful of the ones relevant to skin. And to add more complexity, this relationship isn't just for the intensity or brightness of the light, the irradiance, but it's also with the total amount of light, so the energy or dose. And where you get the best results and when you start dipping into this negative region depends on a whole bunch of things: the wavelengths, the cells, the results that you're looking for, how deep the cells are, probably also lots of genetic factors. On top of that, a mask is actually a bunch of bright spots spread out. That's not going to have the same effect as if you averaged it out and just had a continuous sheet of lower brightness. Again, that is that Bunsen-Roscoe law of reciprocity breaking. Yes, there are gaps in between the lights, but it isn't just the skin directly under the lights that get benefits, the surrounding areas do as well. There is a cool experiment where 2 wounds were created about 2 inches apart. Only one of them was treated with light, but the other wound also healed faster. There's also the light bouncing off skin thing. A lot of the bulbs are probably pressing into your skin in a mask, depending on how well the mask fits your face, but none of them will be for a panel. So even if the 2 products are putting out the same amount of light, the same dose, that's not actually what gets into your skin. So I think it's misleading to say that masks are a scam and everyone should just use a panel to get the same dose. Comparing one number from each just doesn't make sense scientifically. It would be nice to have a proper clinical trial comparing them for different skin benefits, but anecdotally, some people see better results from masks, some see better from panels, some people see side effects from one of these and not the other. But the most important thing, I think, is to find something that you are likely to use consistently. Because for all of these devices, the effects are cumulative. Small panels tend to be cheaper, but you generally need more space for them, and they need to be attached to a wall socket. But the treatment times are usually shorter, and you can use them for more parts of your body without it being super awkward, and there are more different options. Masks are easier to move around with. I found that I can actually cook with one on. Maybe this will finally help me build a habit. But it does depend on how well your eyes fit the mask. You can also get them into your luggage more easily if you travel a lot. You can use them on other parts of your body, but it's a little bit more awkward than a panel. Some people find masks uncomfortable, other people find sitting in front of a panel with their eyes closed or just staring into the light uncomfortable. I don't think there is a right answer for everyone. Also, I kind of lied about the wavelengths before. Those buckets of wavelengths do have the same overall effect, but Some wavelengths are more powerful than others. You need a lot less 620 nanometer light to get the same effects as 650 nanometer, although both of them are red. Mess. Again, whether red light treatments are worth it for you depends on so many factors. You really need to decide based on your own situation. What benefits you want out of it, like for your skin or other parts of your body, what your budget is, whether you can stick to using it. But I do think they offer benefits that standard cosmetic skincare products, the ones that you just slap on top of your skin, do not. So in my opinion, the best way to deal with all of this complexity is to pick a product type, whether it's a mask or a panel, based on what you think you can benefit more from. I highly recommend reading reviews. Then for the products you're considering, check that they have parameters that do what you want. The combination of wavelength, irradiance, treatment schedule, also things like warranty and whether they break easily. For masks, these parameters tend to be what people agree works, the situation with there not being many studies and the studies being sponsored by brands because there is not that much public funding for skincare research. That is a whole different mess I am not going into here, but it is pretty much the stuff in my retinol video, but just worse with a whole bunch of like scammy stuff and weird vibes layered on top. Most studies are on in-clinic panels, but there are a few studies on masks. If you're looking to buy a mask, I highly recommend this amazingly detailed review post from Vanessa of Goals to Get Glowing. Now, originally there was going to be a section here about using a cheap DIY light sensor that Becky designed to check how strong different masks were. A lot of light products just do not have accurate specs. We almost got there, but we ran into this problem where the infrared seemed to just confuse the sensor. Infrared is invisible, but the sensor is telling us that it is putting out tons of light in every color. If you know stuff about light sensors or spectrometers and you think you know what's going on and hopefully how to fix it, please reach out. That would be amazing. If you're wondering why masks are so expensive and if you can make your own cheaper version, check out Becky Stone's fascinating teardown and DIY version she designed. Or if you're into hacking your own stuff together or watching other people do that, Ruth Amos, she is an incredible inventor who's really into skincare. She builds her own mask and lounge suit in her video.